Welcome to the Automated Home Show. It's been a while. My apologies. Life gets crazy, dealing with some unexpected family issues, and we're moving later this month, but that's another story. Today, I want to share an interesting conversation with you that I just had with David Webster, smart home expert, regarding planning a potential smart home build or renovation. It was actually based on an example that somebody shared in the Automated Home forums. I saw the post and I thought, David's going to like this. So sure enough, David and I had a bit of back and forth. And then it kind of got to the point where we both agreed to have a conversation. And I said, look, David, I don't know if anybody else is going to listen to this conversation or be interested in this topic, but why don't we record it anyway, just in case? So here's the conversation. You can tell me if you think it is helpful or interesting. Cool. All right. Let's dive in. Good to see you again, David. It's been a while. What's new in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, it's warming up. It's spring here for sure. All good.
Okay. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, it's a busy time for us. We've got some family dramas happening and unexpected things there. And we're also moving. So relevant to smart homes, we're moving in a few weeks. So I guess I'm going to have to take stock of what I've got here. And anyway, that's a whole nother project for a whole nother time. Today, what we're talking about, and this was going to be a private conversation between you and I. And then I said, look, why don't we record it anyway, just in case somebody else wants to watch it or wants to listen to it. But I'll set you up and then I'll let you fire away, David. But
Okay,
somebody
sure.
who I assume is Nathan made a post in the Automated Home forum a few days ago about advice needed. He's doing a renovation. He wants to plan his smart home setup. He said he's got a budget of about $35,000. He's laid out his plans. I saw this and I thought, this is going to be right up your alley, David. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this. And your response was just mind-blowing. So I thought it might be interesting to just talk more about it and see what we can learn from it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Nathan has clearly already gone ahead and got a professional system quotation, and he's kind of benchmarking against that. And he's come up with a system which I think he describes as being half built by AI. I'm not sure what AI product he used to come to some of the decisions that he has set forth. But he's got an interesting setup that I don't think is actually going to work as he thinks it's going to work. That's really the problem. And there are some technical considerations there, which we can touch on. But the bigger issue really is whether a DIY system, even a really capable one, can ever be the same as a commercially installed and maintained system. And I think he's comparing apples with pears there, and they are very different things. And I think it's very important that people have a clear idea of what they're trying to achieve from a living with the system point of view. And if you're pursuing it as we do, as a hobby interest, and you love tinkering, then this is a great way to do it. The problem I have, and I know you do too, is that while we're tinkering, we upset other people in the house because things don't work the way that they expect them to. If you can live with that, then this is great. If you can't live with it, you probably need a professional to do it, and you need to pay the prices accordingly. But technically, some of the things that were being of a concern to me with the lighting in particular. I'm not sure that for a 6,000 square foot home, Hue is really the right system for it. I can see the attraction, as you know, I'm a big fan of Hue products, but he was talking, I think, about 75 Hue bulbs, which is quite a big number, and certainly in excess of what Hue recommend. Their recommendation is 50. And a lot of people get hung up on the fact that this is a limitation of the Hue bridge, the Zigbee hub that Hue uses, but it's not actually. It's actually the bulbs that are the problem. As you know, you build a Zigbee mesh by adding more and more wired devices to it, and they act as repeaters. And therein lies the problem. Hue bulbs are now really quite old, and the original ones are probably resource limited, and they don't handle large mesh sizes terribly well. So the more bulbs you've got and the more devices on the mesh, the more they have to process. And it gets to a point where certain topologies can't actually process it. And so packets of data go lost or delayed. And for a lighting system, which is mission critical in a house, you want to turn the light on and you want the light to come on every single time. No, that's never going to work. And I think he was proposing a workaround, which was to use the Hue bulbs with an Akara Zigbee hub. And the trouble with that is it doesn't solve the repeater problem. Sure, you can connect 75 or more Zigbee devices, but the mesh that it creates will still be unstable. And that's not me just saying that, that's Philips themselves make that point. So I think if he wants to go that route, there is a solution, and that is to use a Hue bridge, and indeed use two Hue bridges, split the 75 up into two smaller meshes, and then link both bridges to whatever hub he wants to use. That's what I've done with my Homey Pro. I have two Hue bridges, one for inside lights, one for outside lights, and that's how you get around it. It's not elegant, but it does work. So that's fine. But then he's also done something very odd, which is he's using a third-party wireless switch for control. And it's not a product I'm familiar with. It's relatively new in the US. And from what I can gather, it's got some kind of motion sensor built into it. So I think the plan would be that the wireless switch would talk to the Akara, which would talk to the Hue. And I suppose that will work, but it may be rather slow. And it's not clear to me how he's going to make the those devices, which I think are Thread, talk to the Akara hub. He talks about using a mesh system. Again, one not I'm not familiar with, a TP-Link, which has onboard Thread border routers. So he may get the coverage, he may not. I'm not really sure about that. In short, I have real concerns about it. So I think that for the size of his home, it's an all wireless switch and an all wireless bulb solution. I suspect is going to have problems.
Yeah, I think like you said there, if you're someone that it doesn't work some of the time, you know, you got to play with it. This thing breaks, you got to repair that thing. Then no big deal, because there is a massive price difference between what he's laid out and the quote that he got. Like we're talking like $100,000 difference. I
Oh
guess
yeah.
that's what you get if reliability is key there. Oh, interesting. Like I don't really have an experience with Hue bulbs, but you mentioned 50. Is that like a hard limit? Is that like 51?
No,
It's not going to work, or is it around that number?
the actual hard limit is 64. So there's plenty of people who will tell you, oh, yeah, I've got 60 bulbs and it works just fine. Well, that's just great for you. But it depends on the topology of the bulbs, because if they're very close together, some of them will be processing many more repeater actions than ones that are further out, that are endpoints. And it's the ability of the mesh to forward the traffic in a timely and error-free manner that's the limitation, not the hub itself. But the hard limit is 64.
Okay.
So
You know what you just mentioned about having a couple of Hue bridges. Is that what you said?
yeah,
And
that's the Hue bridge is what the Hue call their hub. Yeah.
you could split, then you could split the 75 across, you know, and have two
Yeah,
independent mesh
they,
networks.
they, Philips have made some changes recently, which actually make the process a little bit easier. Previously, you could have as many Hue bridges and lamps attached to them as you want, but each had its own Hue account, which meant that in the app you had to log out of one account and choose another account to be able to control things via the app. They've simplified that now as a start of this year, I think. And so you can have as many Hue bridges as you want, all within one account, and they all appear in the app at one time. It's still not a perfect system because you can't have a wireless switch or sensor on one Hue bridge talk to Hue lamps on another bridge. So that would be an issue. You can get around it, as Nathan was suggesting. If you use third-party switches which talk to a central hub, it can talk to whichever bridge is needed. So there are ways round that, but my hunch is that sooner or later, Philips will make that functionality across bridges work, but it's not there just yet.
Okay. Yeah, we have a on and off crying baby in the background, so I'm trying to mute myself as much as possible. Apologies for the background
Okay.
noise. Okay. So how would, if you were Nathan, obviously we have to assume that budget is important, otherwise just go
Yeah.
for the best, right? So let's assume budget is important. How would you think about this problem, and where would you start?
Well, I think it comes back to some of the things that we talked about with smart lighting, really. I think that for a reliable solution, I would probably not use hue bulbs as a primary lighting source in a room. I would probably use um, um, uh, white lighting of some description and smart switches. That's probably where I would start. And if I want color, I would use it in for accents, table lamps and things like that, but not for main lighting. So if I've got main wired lighting, I might as well use a smart switch, which, as we know, Philips Hue don't do. So you're into using all sorts of smart switches and smart dimmers from other brands. But that's certainly the route that I've gone. I think Hue is great, but if you, I think he claims he's retrofitting the entire space. So he's got plenty of options. And if you're going to put in wiring, put in wired smart lighting is my tip, because it will be the most reliable without doubt. And um, in terms of brand, he probably should be looking at Lutron. And in the States, they have a system called Caseta, which is an interesting sort of mid-tier product from Lutron. So that would be a starting point. But that, in conjunction with Hue, might give him the best of both worlds.
Do you think he's been too optimistic with his budget, or do you think he can come up with some sort of reliable solution that's going to work at around that price point?
I think he's being a little bit optimistic. If you actually look at the numbers, I think that he's pitched the lighting too low and the audio too high. Um, uh, uh, he wasn't clear on what his requirements were for audio, but three Sonos amps is only three zones. And I'm pretty sure that in a 6,000 square foot home, there are more than three audio zones. So he then talks about using 12 speakers. Well, if you've got four pairs per amplifier, that's one pair too many for the amplifier from an electrical point of view. It's not going to work. And all those speakers are going to play at the same volume and the same content. So if they're spread across multiple rooms, they're all going to be doing the same thing at the same time. So it's not an independent zone. So I have a bit of an issue with that. Uh, and it may very well be. Don't get me wrong, I think Sonos is great. It's had its problems this last year, but as a product, it's well regarded, and it will do a fine job for it. But it's not the cheapest solution. There are lower cost ones. And if he really wanted to be lower cost, and he does mention he wants voice control, but there's no mention of using Echo speakers or any of the other voice assistants. So they could be doing multi-room audio, and maybe that's what he's got in mind. I don't know. I actually run a hybrid of Echo speakers and Sonos myself, so there are some pros and there's some cons, but the biggest con is it's more expensive that way. So,
Hmm.
uh,
Well, that's another thing we have in common, David. I didn't even know that, but yeah, we have some Sonos products and we've got some Amazon speakers around the place as well. But for us, they're not interconnected. They're not playing the same content. For you, can you do it like that, or are you just
oh
using?
yeah, you can't make them play the same content at the same time. That's the bigger problem.
Mm.
Depends on what subscription service you've got, but it's not a limitation of the streaming, although that might be the case. It's more the fact that Sonos uses their own proprietary syncing method, and Amazon use their own proprietary syncing method, so the two never talk to one another. So yes, you can play the same content, but they'll probably be playing slightly out of sync, which is probably not what you want.
Okay,
If the rooms
okay.
are far apart, it's not really an issue, but
Yeah, yeah. Well, for us, we've got the the cheapest plan with Amazon Music, which only allows you to stream music on one speaker at a time, and we're constantly moving around the place, and sometimes we want to play it here. Sometimes it just drives me nuts that the
Yeah.
Amazon voice assistant is just constantly trying to upsell you to the, hey,
Oh, I know.
do
Yeah.
you want to
Yeah.
upgrade and you can play in 2 or 3? No, stop it. Stop asking me.
But one of the biggest advantages of Sonos is that it supports just about every streaming platform service that there is. So I use Amazon Music as well, but the fact that it supports all the others is quite good. But none of these things are perfect, and moreover, and I think this is pertinent to Nathan, is if you design and build something that works today, there's a pretty good chance it's going to break tomorrow because one of those players has messed up and changed how the Amazon Echo servers work or how Sonos work, and suddenly something that was working perfectly fine just stops. I've had that experience myself, even in the last few weeks, and it's just so irritating because you think I've not done anything. What the hell's changed here? And of course, it's something that's happened on one of those platforms. So I know the solution to that, of course, is to have everything local with control and what have you. But when you're dealing with outside services such as music, it's not local anymore. So sooner or later, you're going to be referencing a cloud server somewhere, and I think things can go awry. And they certainly change almost on a daily basis. Certainly, the Alexa servers have been all over the place the last few months.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
sometimes for us here, it just seems like occasionally the Amazon system will just have a bad day and just want to take a day off and nothing seems to work. And then the next day
yeah,
it's good again. I don't know what's happening. All right, let's bring it back to Nathan. So he's talking about a big home. I mean, 6,000 square feet. That's a pretty big property, right?
that's
Single
pretty
single
big.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess that introduces some problems in that it is 6,000 square feet on a single story. So, from this point to that point, it's quite far.
Yeah, and although he talks about using a three-node mesh system, which might just cover 6,000 square foot if the building construction is very lightweight, which it probably is. It's probably timber and stud walls and all that kind of stuff. But if there's any kind of brick or concrete or steel involved, the coverage is going to be severely limited. And what people often lose sight of is that you can get a signal and get coverage, but the speed diminishes with distance. And so you can have the fastest access point in the world, but actually it will be very slow to connect when you're at the end of its connection range. And yeah, I don't think three nodes is likely to be enough.
Okay,
But you can have
okay.
it, of course.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of networking, this is something else that I'm looking at the moment. Probably going to upgrade our router or router. Get a good Wi-Fi 7 router for our place that we'll be moving into, I think. And yeah, excited to get an extra band to play around with as well.
Yes, yes. Um, I haven't gone to Wi-Fi 7 myself yet, but I am using a tri-band system at present. And yeah, it's uh, curious that the latest Wi-Fi system, particularly 7 and even the tri-band system I've got, are actually capable of faster speeds than my wired network or my internet service. And that's a good thing because it means that if you are at the limits of the range, if you've got a too high speed, by the time you're at range, you've actually got the right speed. So it's always better to have too high. But Wi-Fi 7 is still leading edge and bleeding edge technology. It's very expensive. So I've delayed on that myself right now. But yeah, the thing to bear in mind, of course, is that the highest speeds are on the 6 gigahertz band, and because the higher the frequency, the more readily attenuated it is by walls. So actually, in a real world indoor situation, the range of those high speed signals is probably less than it is on 2.4 gigahertz and lower speed, which is why, of course, a lot of IoT devices stick with 2.4.
Well, this is something that you and I have talked about a little bit in the past, right? I mean, I think we
Yeah.
talked specifically about not splitting out your Wi-Fi bands, which is something I'm gonna have to, yeah, anyway. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited. And look, I want to shout out Brian from Automate Your Life again. He did a really good video a few months ago, I think, about Wi-Fi 7, and I just rewatched that video again a couple of days ago, and I thought because I looked at the price of one of these routers, and they're not cheap. They're definitely not
No,
cheap.
no.
And then I watched Brian's video, and I thought, you know what? Sounds like it's worth it. I think this is a worthwhile investment.
Yeah, the prices are certainly coming down. And if you only need one to get the coverage that you need, then it's not so bad. But if you actually have 6,000 square foot, Wi-Fi 7 is going to be an expensive proposition. And unless you've got a bunch of Wi-Fi 7 devices that actually use it, there probably isn't a compelling reason to spend the money.
Well, I also know you don't like calling anything future-proof, David, but it's future
No.
future leaning, right? Future ready.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
See, I'm learning. I'm
They're my
learning, right?
preferred terms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
my goal to try and absorb 1% of what you know, David. If I can absorb 1% of what you know, I'll be a smart man.
Oh, you're very kind.
All right, so back to Nathan's home. Where are we at now? What about security? I think you mentioned you weren't really familiar with the
Oh, yeah.
security.
I'm not familiar with the rear link products that he's talked about. They are wired PoE cameras, I think, which is a good thing. But my view on security cameras is if they are for security, then you need a proper security system. And just throwing a few cameras up that are labeled security doesn't make them a security system. They need to be professionally installed to cover the areas of interest and concern, and do clear video day and night. And these are not easy things to do with DIY products. So if security really is important to you, you probably need a professional system. And it's the same with burglar alarms. Generally speaking, DIY systems, insurance companies take no heed of them. They need to be professionally installed and professionally maintained. That's the key to insurance discounting if you've got a system. But if your insurance company says you have to have a security system, a DIY system is just not going to do it.
So I assume we're talking like a significant step up in price for a professional
Oh
system.
yeah, of course, yeah. And it may very well be that a big chunk of the system quote that he was comparing what he was actually for a professionally monitored system. Who knows? He doesn't make mention of that. He
Hmm.
does mention that it was Lutron and Crestron, which to me means it's probably as high end as you can probably go. So it's likely that all the subsystems are also high end. But yeah. Of course, if you're just curious and want to keep an eye on wildlife or are the kids messing around near the swimming pool or whatever, then pretty much anything will do. One of my favorite examples of how a camera can be useful is how and I've seen the footage of this. Some kids were playing in the garden and a builder had left a ladder going up to a first floor window, and there's these toddlers climbing up the ladder, and you suddenly see that the mother spots them on the cameras and comes hurtling out and grabs them off the ladder before they
Wow.
go too high and fall
Heart
off.
attack. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
something for
Okay.
you to think about there, Marty.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Lucky the camera was on, right?
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely. Yeah.
David, I know this is something that you want to talk about perhaps separately, so don't give us all the secret sauce, but shades.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was interesting because Nathan made no mention of shading at all. And as you know, my thought is that if you're going with smart lighting, you need smart shading as part of the solution because they're both lighting control. And yeah, there's a lot of things to consider with smart shading, but I think the basic one is some kind of smart shading is better than no smart shading. So, uh, and if you've got the opportunity to put cables in to the windows, then do it. Do it now because retrofitting it at a later date is a nightmare. And although people talk about battery powered smart shading solutions, and they are very good. But the battery life is typically 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. There are some that are really much longer than that. The Lutron ones, I think, claim up to 2 years with dry batteries. So yeah, batteries can be viable, but for me, having to string up charging cords across the room periodically for hours on end to recharge batteries, that's a no-no. So yes, my advice is put the wires in now because you will live to regret it if you don't.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that I'd like to talk with you more about perhaps some other time. It's going to be timely because that's one of the priorities we have for our new home. We want to get more serious about our sleep, which includes blackout curtains. And hey, while we're at it,
Oh
we might as
yes,
well make it smart and we might as well have blinds as well, just for fun. Why not? So yeah,
yeah,
I'd be interested to talk to you more about that stuff. And
yeah,
maybe I can put something into motion on our side as well.
yeah. Well, I've certainly been doing some work, some experiment with new motors that are using matter over thread, and that's been quite interesting. But yeah, I am having to retrofit some of my own DIY blinds that have been up and running for 10 years now because they just aren't durable. But yeah, replacing Z-Wave with thread motors, you can certainly notice that they're a lot snappier to respond. Um, you press a button and something happens pretty much straight away. That's really noticeable.
Okay, great. Actually, you just remind me of a point that you talked about. You said one of your concerns was the hybrid approach to the
Mm.
planning of this home, and so can you talk a bit more about that? Because I looked at that and it shows what do I know, right? But I looked at that and I thought, oh, being a little bit diversified and not entirely reliant on a single system, surely that's a good thing. And but you had your concerns.
Yeah. Well, there's two aspects to that. There's one which is how do you actually get product A to talk to product B, and that's the sort of technical aspect, if you will. And then there's the other one, which is the usability of it. If product A has its own app and product B has its own app, you're going to have a phone full of apps if you need to make any custom changes to it. And that doesn't strike me as being particularly user friendly. So something like a professionally installed system, a big chunk of your change is going to create a user interface that does everything in one app, in one place. And so that's a major plus. And if it doesn't work or something changes for whatever reason, it's down to them to fix it. So, if there are problems, you can say, well, come and fix it, please. But yeah, the hybrid approach um, has maintenance issues apart from the initial I'm going to get it working. And it's maintainability, I think, that worries me more than anything else because as we've just said, if any component of it depends on um, a cloud or just new firmware. My SmartThings hub, which is still doing some work here, is forever getting new firmware updates, and I can lay money on it that it will hiccup when it does the update. It'll either need to be rebooted or something that should have worked didn't work, and you just can't rely on it. It's never rock solid. So yeah, I think as a tinkerer, hybrid is great, but for the rest of the family, maybe not so.
Okay. Um, Real quick, not to go too deep into this, but how are things going for you recently with Homey as a system? And do you think David should consider Homey? Do you think this is something that Nathan might want to take a look at?
Yeah, I was a little bit taken aback by the fact that he had chosen the Akara hub, and I'm not quite sure what his thinking was there, but I think Homey Pro would be a better choice if he really wants to go that route. And it does support Matter devices and Thread, um, and it does work with you and some of the other products that he's talking about. So yes, I still like Homey a lot, and certainly my second hub is working a lot more reliably than the first one. So I'm really pleased about that. So yeah, I think it would be a good choice. Of course, but he's in, I think it's Florida, isn't it? He's going to be able to pre-order the Homey Pro Mini very shortly, which is available in North America first. So if he doesn't need Z-Wave devices, that would be a good choice for him, perhaps. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting as well. I was wondering, why the Akara hub, the M3. I thought, oh, why
yeah.
not Homey? But what do I know?
Yeah, but it's also possible he's already got it, of course. He doesn't say. Um,
Yeah.
and actually, that's one of the problems that everybody has, and that is that you and I get into this as a hobby, technical interest, and you buy all these different things at various times without understanding that integration is actually the most important aspect of any of it. And so, having spent the money, it's very hard to say, well, you know what, that doesn't work, and I need to forget that and do something else. That's actually a bitter pill to swallow, and it leads to us trying to shoehorn systems together that were never really going to work properly in the first place. Um, I'm guilty of that. I've done it, so I know what I'm talking about. Um, I have some very stupid workarounds that one hub talks to another via virtual devices on the Alexa platform, and then Alexa changes and the whole thing falls apart. But it's fun to do, so I enjoy it, all that tinkering.
Yeah, well, well, maybe we can talk in more detail about Homey and how you're running two hubs at your place some other time. Mindful of
Yeah.
the time here, David. We've got about, I think, about 7 minutes remaining here. So, anything you want to cover with regard to Nathan's example scenario here, or anything else?
I think it's all very well coming up with a shopping list of kit, but that's not the starting point. The starting point is, what do I want it to do? What are the must-haves? And I'm picking up three things. Lighting, although he hasn't got any shading, so that's a big no-no from me. Security and multi-room audio. And he doesn't really seem to have defined, how many rooms there are going to be needed for any of those things. And I think that you need to define what it is that you're trying to do in the first place before you come up with a kit list. And I noticed that he was also asking for recommendations for outdoor speakers and outdoor lighting. So he's already thinking about expanding the system. Um, and that might heavily influence what you do in the first place. Otherwise, you're going to go down one of those dead end roads.
Yeah, yeah. I think he did mention shades. His plan was 12 Lutron Serena
Oh, you're
smart
right. I'm sorry.
blinds
Yes.
plus a
Yeah,
Lutron
yeah.
Cassetta bridge
Yeah,
smart window
yeah.
control. And he says each of those Lutron Serena Smartwood blinds will be $300 a piece for a total of 3,600 plus the bridge
Yeah.
$80. So yeah,
Well, thanks for reminding me. I had completely forgotten. That is a good choice. But again, it's like the Sonos. It's an expensive solution, but it is good. It's just that only 12 blinds for 6,000 square foot doesn't sound like enough to me. But so which rooms is he prioritizing?
mm,
Um, but yeah, the Lutron solution is without doubt one of the finer ones, but there are others. Um, and if you were to go with um, a professional system, they would likely offer him products from other leading brands like Savant and Crestron, both of whom do their own lighting and shading solutions. And of course, the advantage there is that they're 100% integrated, so there's never any question of them not working. But yeah, I've forgotten that. So his hybrid was Hue, Akara, third-party switches, and Caseta blinds, and somehow they're all meant to work together. And yeah, that's a bit of an ask. It's okay for a smaller system, but when it becomes very large, I think that and wireless, I think that's where I have serious concerns.
well, I look at his plan, and again, this is my lack of experience, but I saw it before I saw, heard your thoughts about his plan. I saw his plan. I thought, oh, sounds good to me. This sounds great. I'll see what David thinks. Oh, no, David says it's not going to work.
Well, yeah, I hate to pour cold water on somebody's project, but it would be if I were in his shoes and I chose some of those solutions and then found later on down the line that it can't work no matter what I do with it, I think I'd be pretty upset. So I think you need to start in the right direction. And he does have some good products in there. I'm not sure he's got enough of the good products, and pairing them with a DIY hybrid that is very dependent on his personal ability to create the automations and the integrations between them. It's quite challenging. It's non-trivial. It's not a question of just plugging it in.
Well, for $100,000 difference, I would be tempted to take it on. I would be tempted to take on the challenge because it sounds like he's kind of most of the way there. Maybe he needs to rethink a couple of things here and there, but we're talking about a good chunk of change.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, as I said, I think if you are enthusiastic and you want to enjoy the journey, and other people in the house are okay with that, then go ahead, please, because I would enjoy it too. But if you want to just walk in on day one and have everything work when you press that button, um, I tell you, Marty, I have seen it happen where people, high net worth individuals, walk into a property, and if they can't figure it out instantly, their reaction is rip it all out. You because I don't understand it. Therefore, it's of no value to me whatsoever. And it can be the most expensive system in the world, and yet not suit. A great example of that, going back some years, is yeah, you talk to a custom installer, and they put in a fantastic system with multi-room audio and all the rest of it, and they go back on a maintenance visit and find in the kitchen that the lady of the house has got a transistor radio on the windowsill. Why? Because she can't work the system. Nobody's ever asked her how she's going to use it. And therein lies a problem. Not all professionals really understand all end users, and it's actually quite a big problem. And some of the things that you and I have talked about, the difference between lighting circuits and zones and all that, users don't know about that. All they want to know is that when I press that button, the lights come on and do what I want them to do.
Yeah,
And if the
you're.
button isn't labeled, which so often is the case, and we've talked about that, I think, as well. Labeling of buttons is a real problem.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's failed. It's an epic fail, and an expensive epic fail at that. But yeah, you have to ask yourself, am I offering a solution that, whether it's DIY or professional, that actually meets the needs of the person using it, and isn't actually a barrier to them enjoying? I remember sitting in on a client meeting between an integrator and an end user, and blueprints all over the table of what they'd planned. And there was big screen TVs here and there, all with 5.1 surround sound systems and all the rest of it. And I looked at the husband and wife who were spending the money, and I could see the eyes glazing off. So I actually asked them the question, do you actually watch movies? Oh, no,
What's the point?
no point at all. But nobody had ever asked them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's astonishing. Yeah.
Yeah. Great advice, David. Look, we've got to leave it there. Unfortunately, our call is about to drop off any second now. It was a pleasure, and hopefully, if only Nathan listens to this conversation, or hopefully he gets some value out of it. But who knows? Maybe some other
Yeah.
people will.
And my apologies to Nathan if I came across as being too negative. I think
Not at
that
all.
if he wants to
I'm
do it, he should
sure.
go for it.
I'm sure he'd be appreciative of the advice. So appreciate your time, David, and we'll have to catch up at some point again sometime soon. We'll talk about window treatments and Homey and whatever else you want to talk about as well.
Fantastic. Bye for now, Marty, and speak to you soon.
All right. Take care. Okay, so I hope that was interesting to at least one person. I think Nathan, the original poster on the automated home forums, I'm sure he's going to get some value out of that. And, it was interesting for me. Always like talking to David. He's a very smart guy, and I learn something new every time I talk to him. So I had fun. Hopefully you got something out of it as well. As mentioned at the start, I am moving home soon. So, yeah, that's adding to the stress that we have going on at the moment. That's the least of my concerns, to be perfectly honest. But as far as that pertains to smart homes, I guess I'm going to need to itemize, catalog, and plan how I'm going to dismantle everything and put it back together in the new home, and hopefully everything goes smoothly. I might even document it. I don't know. We'll see how we go. But I'm sure at least a couple of things are going to break along the way. And hopefully we can get that all fixed up. There will be some improvements as well. I'm excited to hopefully invest in a Wi-Fi 7 router. And I think that's going to be a worthwhile investment. Thanks to Brian for his video about Wi-Fi 7 a few months ago. And thanks to Dan, a bit of back and forth in the emails. He persuaded me that it's worth taking the leap and getting a better router. Before letting you go today, I have a real quick funny story, despite the fact that life has not been that funny recently. I do have a bit of a sense of humor. So earlier today, I jumped in a car. Think of it like Uber. Here in Asia, it's Grab, right? Basically the same as Uber. Anyway, I booked a ride from this place that not far away from home. And the pickup point was actually across the road from where I was standing. And I booked it. Said the driver's going to be there in 3 minutes. I said, okay, that's perfect. I'm going to be able to cross the road. I'll wait a minute or two and the car will arrive. Anyway, I zoomed in on the map just after I booked it and it said, you've got 3 minutes until the driver arrives. And I noticed when I zoomed in that the driver was on my side of the road, basically right where I was. And sure enough, I looked at the license plate and I turned around and just coming around the corner at walking speed, that was my car right there. So I kind of jumped out in front of him, waving my phone around and waving to him. And it was a older uncle sort of gentleman. And he kind of ignored me, and fair enough, I guess. He probably thought I was a crazy person. And he went on his way and then did a U-turn and came back, and I met him on the other side of the road. And I said, hey, that was me, whatever. Doesn't matter. So that was kind of a funny start to the ride. But then during the ride, and he didn't speak a lot of English, but he was a foot pumper. You know what I mean? These people that they seem to lack the ability to hold the accelerator steadily, to maintain a steady speed. I don't know how someone gets to that point in life, driving a car like on, off, on. I just feel sick. As a passenger, this makes me feel sick. So I was actually feeling quite nauseous for a while. I still don't feel great, to be honest. And it's been, I don't know, an hour and a half or 2 hours since I got home. But anyway, these foot pumpers kills me. It kills me. I don't know how they learn how to drive. I was considering asking him, like, hey, are you pumping your foot? And I thought, what's the point? He barely speaks English. I'm just going to save my breath. So anyway, that's my funny story. Didn't feel great, a bit nauseous, but funny in hindsight. Hopefully you are having a great week wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Take care, and I'll talk to you again sometime soon.